Welcome to the
Hey.
Science of Parenting podcast. Here we are again. I just love that intro.
I know, it makes
I
me
think
like
I know. Anyway, here we are where we connect you with research-based information that fits your family. We'll talk about the realities of being a parent and how research can help guide your parenting decisions. I'm Lori Haynes, and I am the parent of three in three different life stages. I have one launched, one in college, and one in high school, and I'm a parenting educator.
And I'm Mackenzie Johnson. I'm a parent of 2 young children with their own quirks, and I'm a parenting educator.
And today we are going to talk about parenting styles.
Yeah. I'm
Excited.
excited.
Yeah,
We're
kind of
both
excited.
excited.
We're both excited. Yay, us. So, what are parenting styles? They are the typical ways that parents think, feel, and behave in terms of child rearing.
All right. So think, feel, and behave. Okay, so I know we're gonna get into like the technical terms, that of like parenting styles. But from that broad definition, how would you say you think, feel, and behave generally? Like, how would you define your parenting style if you had to just that definition?
So we chatted about this ahead of time, of course,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so I could not come up with 3 words because I could only hear one word in my head, and that word has always been respect.
Oh.
Like
Oh, you're
we
serious. Good job.
I know, and
Respect
you
is
said you're
such a good
still
word.
I know it's just but yeah, that it just
Yeah.
respect we respect each other, we respect others, and respect.
Respect. That's a look
Uh,
at you.
I'm so stuffy. I'm so stuffy.
But the best part is you mean it. Like,
Uh,
I know you well enough to know, like, you mean it. Oh, you're good, you're good.
What
Okay,
are
so
your words?
well, now okay, so I was like, the way I typically think, feel, and behave. So, my thinking word is that I'm a forgetter. Like, I'm a
Ah,
forgetter parent. Like, "Oh, you need your backpack." Like, "Oh, we gotta bring winter boots." Like, I'm a forgetter, and sometimes people are like, "Oh, you're so organized." I'm like, "It's a
oh,
front." Like, I gotta be
yeah.
at least a little with it to get my kids and me where we need to go. So the way I usually think as a parent is like, "Oh, I forgot that." That's what I think a lot as
Yeah.
a parent.
I
Okay?
love that. No, I
Okay.
love that. That's
I'm
so
a
much
forgetter.
better. Yeah, I'm a forgetter. I'm
I'm a
totally a
forgetter.
forgetter. Yeah.
Okay, and then my feeling word is that sometimes parenting makes me feel overstimulated. Or, like,
Mm,
overwhelmed. Like so, like, I use the example always in the car. Like, my partner likes to have the radio on in the car. I do not. Like, I do not like the radio in the car because right now our littlest one, like, fusses a little bit in the car seat, so it's just kinda like, and then my
yeah.
preschooler needs to know every time, "Are we in town or out of town? Are we on the edge of town? Are we going out of town?" It's like a conversation every time I get in the car. And then my husband tries to talk to me, like or I shouldn't say, my husband wants to have a conversation, which is reasonable, but then the radio's on, like and so I just like, oh, that stimulates me, that's a lot. So that's
That's
a
a
way
good
that I often
feeling word.
feel.
That's a
Yeah,
good
that's
feeling
a
word.
feeling
Yeah,
word,
yeah,
and honest, that's honest,
yeah.
I get overstimulated. Okay, and then my behave word, which this one's a little more positive, makes me feel a little more put together, is I'm a breather. Like,
Mm,
behave, like, that is a behavior, that is a thing that I do, and, like,
yeah.
a learned behavior that I've had to learn to do as a parent, like okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
I
a
love your
breather.
words.
Thanks.
I'm totally a
I'm still
forgetter.
with it.
Totally a forgetter. Yeah, that's
Okay,
great. So, all
okay.
right,
So technical words. Should we
yeah,
get into
those
the
are
real
great.
ones?
Love those. So let's talk about the research then. All right.
Alright.
So a great deal of parenting research when it comes to parenting styles, the credit really goes to Diana Baumman, and she came up with parenting styles back in the 1970s even.
Yeah.
And so those styles are kind of defined by parents, whether they were high or low in 2 different traits. So were they high or low in demandingness and responsiveness?
Mhm.
So when it comes to responsiveness and demandingness, you can be high in demanding or low in demanding, and high in responding or low in responding.
Mhm.
So demandingness is kind of that degree to which we have expectations and standards. So what are our demands
Okay.
of our
Yep.
children,
Our
right? And then
expectations.
yep. Yep, expectations. And our responsiveness then is that warmth that we provide and the acceptance that we have of what our child needs and wants. So,
Mhm. All right.
what if we want to use the word you use, expectations
Yeah.
and response, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll say, and I've also heard, like in terms of these parenting styles, depend on where you look, you might hear other terms for these two
Right.
traits. I actually have a little list. So on my list that
Yeah.
is here, um, love and limits. So
Yep.
that's like the responsiveness is the love. The limits are like the expectations or the demandingness. Expectations. All right. That's not my word. I got it somewhere.
Right.
Expectations and warmth,
Yep.
or nurturing and control. And actually, when I was getting ready for this article or this episode, I actually heard the terms acceptance and authority, and I liked
Hmm.
that too. I like
Hmm.
those. Which one would you feel like? Which ones do you naturally say?
Um, I definitely think that I have the word expectations
Yeah.
is definitely one that I mean, I think my 3 children would be like, "Yeah." If you'd said something else, we would call you out. Expectations, and then, I gotta go with the research word
Yeah.
responsiveness. I know that's a big word, but warmth, yeah, I respond. Like I have these responses. And so yeah, I have expectations and I respond. And so I would say that yeah, those are my 2 words. How about you?
Yeah. I feel like the words I know are like demandingness and responsiveness, but the words I might say like in conversation might be more like, yeah, like the expectations and warmth. But I kind of really like that like authority and acceptance. I feel like that actually really gets at where my brain lives on those two traits. Like we're accepting our child's needs and their wants and like what they have going on, but like authority, not in like a unreasonable way, right? But like I am the adult here. It's my job to keep us safe and get us where we need to be. So I like that. I
Right.
might try to use those words.
Yeah, I
Acceptance
can
and authority, if I can
I
remember them.
I gotta write them down so I can remember them,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Which I mean, that word kind of drives us right into another thing that Baumrin did is that she outlined 3 different parenting styles. And actually, many parents have probably heard these. So I'm just, gonna replay them a little bit here. So the
Yeah.
authoritative is a parenting style that she identified, and authoritarian is a second style that she identified, as well as permissive. So when we look at those 3 words, I know those first 2 sound really similar.
So
And
similar.
I mean, gosh, even all through, my educational background of learning about parenting, and I had to figure out ways to separate those 2 words. But authoritative, the ending, tive at the end there,
Mhm.
right? It's think of it like compromise, democratic process, give and take. And so authoritative is very much that give and take. I'm going to listen, I'm going to respond. You're involved in this as well as me. You're the child, but I'm also going to listen to you. Okay.
Mhm.
So authoritarian, that Tarian at the end is more of that I'm the adult, it's my way, and you are the child, and you will listen to my way and you will do it my way. Okay, so authoritative, you've got that give and take, that flex and flow, and authoritarian, the adult is the primary figure that you see there. And then you have the permissive, and permissive is a little easier to understand, right? So in permissive, I think that
Yeah.
what you can picture in your head is the child has more control. So there are less limits, the child has more free reign. The parent is saying, well, let's figure out what the child needs and wants based on what the child needs and wants.
Oh, yeah.
So those are the 3 parenting styles, if I was to
Mhm.
summarize it in my own words. And how do you picture them?
Yeah, well, I love that Bomberin kind of lays them out and like, okay, authoritative is like high authority and high acceptance, right? Like we're both here, and that's where the authoritative is. And then the other two are like on either side, like this one's high and this one's low, right? So
Right.
authoritarian is like the high authority, maybe not so, a little bit lower acceptance, and then the permissive was the high acceptance and the low authority. So I love that little visual of like both high, one of each. I like that. But so the terms that I wrote down. So because yeah, the authoritative, authoritarian, great words, like great parenting styles, good research, but hard to differentiate.
Yeah.
So I wrote for authoritative that considers both sides, right? Like you said,
Mm,
like the democratic process. Like I'm considering my needs and wants, and I'm also accepting my child's needs and wants.
right.
For authoritarian, I wrote down my way or the highway.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's
Yeah. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
much wiggle room there that, like, what I need is what is gonna happen.
Right.
And then in the permissive style, I kinda wrote, like, the best friend, right? Like,
Ah,
I care about my child's needs, which is good and important in their wants, but maybe I don't hold them to those standards or expectations that they might, maybe should. So those are my words. Authoritative. Well, those aren't my words. Those are Bomberen's words.
Yeah.
Authoritative, authoritarian, and permissive are those three styles.
Excellent. So,
Yeah.
you think about, okay, so we've identified these styles, but, how do they really play into how our kids grow, learn, and achieve, right? So
Yeah, there's
there's
three different ways.
yeah. So we were talking about a little bit of research earlier, and we found this study that was published in 2013, and it's from the Journal of Humanities and Social Science. And it's cool because it really identified and it began to review the literature on parenting styles and how these styles actually affect children and their outcomes. So what are these styles doing for children as they learn and grow? And so ultimately what they concluded, super cool, we chatted about this, and I think we both were just fascinated by this, is that they concluded that parents that have a strong relationship with their children, and they're using more of that authoritative style, their children are actually higher achieving, they have a higher well-being and a higher self-esteem. They have better health, they have less risk-taking behaviors, they have more, they show up at school more positive enrollments. And that generally says that that authoritative style, that one in the middle, has better outcomes for children. And so that, gosh, what we're basically saying is the style that we choose really does impact our children's outcomes.
Oh yeah, and those are long-term things, right? Like their health, the risky choices that they might make as an adolescent or as an adult, right?
Right.
Like all of those things are important things that across different parents, we might all have different goals for our kids long term, but in general, we want healthy kids, we want safe kids, we want, good self-esteem. We want those things for our kids, and it's kind of exciting to know that okay, there's an answer or part of an answer of how we get there. So
Right.
finding that authoritative balance of what my child needs, right? That acceptance and what I need and what needs to happen in terms of their expectations or authority. Finding that balance is going to help us get good outcomes. That's great news.
Yeah, that balance, right?
Yeah.
Especially that can be especially hard, especially when you think about, there are times where, we can say, oh, I really, my goal is to be an authoritative parent. But there are times where, you gotta say, these are the rules
Yeah.
and these are not an option.
Yep.
I think about safety. So many parents will, along the way as a parenting educator, that safety becomes one of those times where parents say, what am I supposed to do when they won't keep their car seat buckled? What am I supposed to do when they run out in the street? How can I be an authoritative parent? Well, you know what? At that point in time, the health and safety of your child is most important, and having
Yeah.
a conversation with the child about,
Yep.
this is why, and yeah, I was saying to have a conversation with your toddler. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying as you're buckling them in their seat, you're using a voice that says, we need to stay buckled. We need to
Mhm.
stay buckled.
Mhm.
This is not an option to unbuckle. We need to stay buckled.
Well, and the difference, I think that's a great example. Yeah, like riding in the car when that child finally figures out they can unbuckle it. But even that conversation with your teenager when they start driving,
Right.
right? It's a different conversation, but it is this is the rule. This is why authority or demandingness or expectations is important. We need to keep our kids safe. This is an expectation we are going to follow.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Another piece of that I always tell parents who are, they can be frustrated with, how do I balance this? And I
Mhm.
got frustrated, and I still get frustrated, is there's a way to show your child that you're still listening to them. Like, I understand that you are upset about being buckled. I totally hear you. I understand that it is
It's a
uncomfortable,
bummer.
that it's tight. I hear you. I hear what you're saying, but we still have to buckle. And
Yeah.
so, it's not really, this negotiation may not be happening out loud, but it might be more in your body language, your body posture, that
Totally.
you're nodding your head. Yep. I know you're upset about this. Your voice is, your
Yeah.
voice is being delivered in a way that says, I hear you. I feel that you don't like this either. I don't like being constrained either. And
Mhm.
so there's that balance, that difference of, that argumentative loud voice that says, you will keep your car seat. Okay,
Yeah.
that's that authoritarian, as opposed to, you know what, I know, I get it. I am on team unhappy about this, right?
I'm on team. This is a bummer.
Yeah, this is a bummer.
Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of times what we don't give ourselves permission to do is say, I hear ya. Yeah, it does stink.
Mhm.
We feel like we have to jump into this. No, this is the way we can actually say to them, yeah, I don't like it either. I don't like it either. But
Right?
this is the way it is.
Right? It could be fun if it was safe for me to lay in the back seat, like, not so safe.
Right. Yeah.
Not so safe.
And I'm just laughing at myself because I'm going back to my word at the beginning, which was respect.
Respect.
And I was like, there
Respect.
we go.
You're
Back to
so
the
good.
stuffy
But it is,
word
it's
of,
true.
I just want to respect that they have feelings about this, and they have strong feelings about this. And guess what?
Mhm.
I have strong feelings about it too. And so I'm going to respect that you have strong feelings about this thing that is, pressing against your chest to keep you safe.
Yeah.
And you will learn to respect that we have boundaries and we have rules.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. A time when it's hard for me is like when during transitions during our day. So
Mm,
like which is such a Mackenzie word, but like
yeah.
when we're like getting ready for bed after playing, or when it's time to come to supper, or in the morning when we're getting out the door, like finding that balance of, okay, I need us to get going and you want, right? Like it's not an option whether or not we are going to leave the house in the morning. Um, but how I approach it, like you said, that like I know you're really wishing we had time for this morning. But reminding myself in the mix, like I said, I get overstimulated. And sometimes I get in a hurry. Like,
Yeah.
I get in a hurry.
I get in a hurry.
I get in
I
a hurry.
forget.
Right?
Right? I
Right?
forget. Right?
But we know that balance. I mean, yeah, we're not going to get it perfect every time. We've talked about that before. It takes practice and we get there. But yeah, like taking the time to consider that over time, we hope in the overall picture of our parenting, we have a balance
Yes,
between.
definitely. And
Yeah.
then there's also a little bit of research on how authoritative parents, those ones in the middle, and authoritarian parents,
Mhm.
on the other side, how they look at highly intense situations or emotionally charged situations. So research actually, kind of plays into that idea that if you are an authoritarian parent and you are the parent that, has these higher demands and you're listening to the child less, you actually may perceive their behavior as them choosing to misbehave.
Mhm.
So you see that they are choosing to uh, do these things out of, you know, trying to push your buttons or, make
Yeah.
you upset intentionally. And authoritative parents, the parents in the middle, they actually perceive that as, okay, well, there must be a reason why they're misbehaving. And so I'm going to try to understand that reason behind the misbehavior. So the research actually showed that those two parenting styles actually even completely viewed why children misbehave differently,
Oh, yeah.
which I thought was really super cool because I can think about different times in my life as my parenting journey from when my children were little to now, and I think about, I can like visually see people in my brain and thinking, this was my child's behavior, and we saw two completely different things. That
Mm.
that person saw my child intentionally misbehaving, and I immediately saw the noise that startled, or heard the noise that startled them. I saw it from across the way, and I knew that that was why they behaved the way that they did. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I can think of different examples of
Oh,
of,
yeah.
of how.
And I agree reading that, like that understanding of that article of, okay, authoritative parents are more likely to one perceive, the experience of the child and how that's affecting their behavior, but then that affecting how we like discipline or guide our children in that situation, right?
Right.
I think one of the phrases that I've seen that I've kind of clung to is like, you're having a hard time, right? Like,
Mm.
like it's not that you're giving me a hard time. It's like you're having a hard time, right?
Hmm.
So the meltdown across, I tend to go with the preschooler, infant, toddler kind of age since that's kind of where my kids are at. But even in older kids, like that meltdown is a part of something like, yeah, I'm tired or I'm hungry or this is just too
Right.
big, right?
I just took a test and I feel like I did terribly on it. And
Right.
now you're telling me that I can't have, my favorite dinner because, all right, whatever.
Or in my house right now, it's like I came home from childcare and I'm hungry and I'm expecting a snack, and or my like daughter might be thinking that, and I'm thinking like dinner is 5 minutes from being done. Like give it
Right.
5 minutes. Don't eat a snack. We're not gonna have a snack, but like those
Yeah,
competing demands, but understanding each other's needs for sure.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, what is a time that you feel like you were able to navigate a challenging moment really well when it comes to your style?
Um. A challenging moment that I navigate well with my child. Um, I think in that infant stage,
Mm,
like when that child is, having a hard time going to sleep or is getting ready, wants to eat, but we're not quite ready. We don't have everything together yet. I'd say that's a time when I'm able to balance that a little bit better. Of like, okay, I'm really trying to finish changing your diaper very quickly. But I'm a little more aware of that balance in that infant stage. And I think part of it, we talked about that like perception of what's happening. We tend to assume infants don't have it, they don't have those skills yet. And so maybe I'm a little more forgiving in that
sure.
state of like,
Oh,
you're right, you're so hungry.
mhm.
Uh, you know?
Yeah.
What about you? When would you say you feel like you balance it well?
So, I share a funny story that I just vividly remember about my middle daughter, and she must have been about 2, 2.5, and she had her 2 favorite toys, right? Her 2 favorite toys that as parents, we often have multiple
Oh
of the
yeah, more
favorite
than
toy,
one just in
right?
case.
More than one, yes. So this happened to be a small, little, about 6 inches tall lemur that had a long fuzzy tail, and she would take the fuzzy tail and she would rub it on her nose to comfort herself and
Oh
soothe
yeah.
herself. And so we had several of them. So you can imagine the state of the toys was different, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes there was a clean Trilo and a
Oh
dirty
yeah.
Trilo, right? Yeah. So one morning she grabs both Treelos and she, in her little fist, she's got them, tight in her little fist. 2 Treelos, mommy. And yes, that's right. You do have 2 Treelos. You do have 2 Treelos. That's right. Just remember, just one Treelo gets to go into daycare. So, we get in the car and we buckle up, put the seatbelt on, and that's fine. She's got those little fists tight around those
Yeah.
tails. 2
These
Treelos,
are coming
mommies,
with
right?
me.
These are coming in. Yeah. And so, in my brain, I'm thinking, well, I could pull the authoritarian and could have pulled one right away and said, you are not taking them both to daycare. You are only taking one. And what would the car ride have been? The car
Oh yeah.
ride, right? Loud tantrum all the way there.
Hard.
So I chose the authoritative middle ground and thought, okay, that's fine. 2 Trilos are welcome to be in my car. I don't mind.
Yeah.
So it was a very peaceful car ride. It was great. Every once in a while I'd hear from the back, 2 Trilos, mommy, 2. Right. Again, I could have chosen the authoritarian route and said, you won't talk to me like that. But
Yeah.
she's 2.5. We're on her way to daycare, and I'm choosing the authoritative middle ground, thinking, yeah, she's wanting to assert herself and tell me that both those
Yeah.
Treelos are going in the building. I, in my mind, know that they aren't, right?
Mhm.
So we get to daycare. Her little fists are white knuckled by this time, and she's got both Treelos in her hand, and she says, 2 Treelos, mommy. I said, that's right, you do have 2 Treelos, but only one Treelo gets to go inside. Fist tighten, even like this time,
Like,
those
no.
right, 2 Treelos, mommy. Again, I'm choosing the middle ground. I'm not choosing to address her attitude. I'm choosing to address the fact that the rule is one
Yeah.
Treelo is going in that building with us. And I tell her, and I'm trying to play this in my brain, going, yes, that's right. I understand. You want both of these to go in.
Yes.
That's right. You do have 2 Treelos. Only one can go in the building. You decide, or I will decide for you which one goes in.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think she's going to decide? No, she's 2.5, right? She's going to grip them tighter and, even kind of pull them away from me so I can't.
Mm.
So this was the second time I repeated myself. That's right. You do have 2 Treelos. Only one can go and decide. You get to decide, or I will decide. 2 Treelos. Okay,
Yeah,
third
holding their
time.
ground.
All right. I'm on time number 3. And I said this time, that's right. You do have 2 Treelos. We're going to go and decide inside. You can choose which Treelo to bring in, or I will choose.
Mm-hmm.
And if I choose, I will choose. And I pointed to one.
This one.
I
Yeah.
will choose this one. This is the one I am going to choose to bring inside. So I now took the authoritative piece and I pushed it a little farther and I said, now I get to control. I get
Yep.
to choose.
Yep.
Right. And so she looked me firmly in the eye and gripped a little tighter. And I started to reach for the one I was choosing. And she took that one and she tossed it on the floor with all her 2-year-old might. And she showed me the other one and kind of shoved it in my face. And she said, this Treelo, mommy. I'm not going to address her attitude. She's 2.5.
Yeah.
There is now only one Treelo going inside. I only made one fatal error. When I pointed to the Treelo that I would have chosen to bring inside, I pointed to the clean Treelo. And so that day in particular, the one Treelo that went inside was the dirtiest Treelo that we had.
Well loved.
Right? The well-loved Treelo. But I feel like that is a moment of, like, literally in my brain, I walked through all those steps. I want a peaceful car ride. She can take the 2 Treelos.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to argue with her. She's in here. She's trying to engage me in an argument. I'm going to stick with, that's right. You do have 2. Yep, you have 2.
Yep.
And then when it came right down to, I needed to be the authoritative authority figure. I'm the adult.
Yeah.
I'm in control. I'm going to say, here's what's going on. I'm going to choose that one. Like, I want you to know what I'm going to choose.
This is what's going to happen.
And when you know what I'm going to choose, you're realizing your choice is about to be eliminated. So I gave her one more chance to choose.
Mm-hmm.
I think we both won in that situation.
Absolutely.
And I'm not, I don't feel bad that I never addressed, her little nasty lack of respect.
Right. Like, 2-year-old looking for that independence. She's I want to.
I got to take 2 Treelos in the car. Yep, you did.
Yep.
But they're not going in.
Yeah. Well, but when we look at that, going back to some of those research bullets we looked at, like that long term, right? It's a win for both of you. Your child was able to kind of rise to the expectation. Like, the expectation didn't change. There's only one allowed in daycare. That expectation is still there, but you were heard, right? You got to hold and love those in the car, and you got to bring one in, right?
Yep. And
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is, I love that story. And one, I love Treelo. Like, what a great name. What a great name. But it kind of moves us into, so what's the takeaway? It's like, all right, we learned about these 3 parenting styles and kind of how they're defined, that long term, it sounds like the authoritative, the research tells us authoritative with that balance of both is kind of leading to the best outcomes for kids. And we know in those kind of heated and challenging moments is where that really shines through the most. And so I think my takeaway from all of that was like, okay, I can soak all that in and what comes back out and what I do. And I kind of came to this idea of like compliance and cooperation. Mm-hmm. And like, we talked about the safety thing, compliance being like, you can't run in the road to chase that thing. Like, you can't run in the road to get the ball. That's not safe. You need to comply right now.
Yep.
And so pick that battle. But there's a lot of times when we don't have to, right? Where we can do the, like, 1 Treelo, 2 in the car, 1 when we get inside. Like,
so many more of those.
So much more cooperation. It's choosing the battle within ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. So can you think of a time where you maybe didn't choose cooperation, that you, looking back now, you could have chose cooperation?
Actually, an ongoing regular occurrence. The getting the shoes on.
Oh,
like, I told you that, like, sometimes like getting out the door is hard, and like the getting the shoes on, that I tend to choose like, get your shoes on, like, we need your shoes on. But it's like, okay, like, one, I could prepare by giving us more time to get out the door. Like, I could be a little more prepared there, so that I give her that minute, like, oh, you're wanting to do your coat first, or, oh, you wanted to grab this before you go, and so like even the order of which we have to do things, like shoes, coat, breakfast, like, get in the car. Like, Oh,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
I could probably let that go a little. Like, I maybe need to stop breathe talk every
Yeah.
morning, and let it like right. That doesn't have to be a super demand. But I could leave more room for kind of where my child might want to be in that moment. What about you?
So I'm gonna play in that permissive piece a bit because
Okay.
I do have three,
Yeah.
and they are older, and so sometimes with my youngest, there are things where I probably am a little bit more permissive,
Ah.
and I'll catch myself, telling the mothers of her friends,
Oh yeah.
she's the third. Eh, she's the
She's
third.
all right.
So yeah, there are things where I'm like, yeah, that way maybe I need to treat her like the first
Yeah. So
instead of the
holding
third.
that authority.
In that particular instance, I maybe should have said, no, you actually will, be home
Yeah.
at such and such a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, for me, it's those moments of not being, tends to be that permissive piece of,
Yeah. Like we're leaning in
oops.
opposite directions,
Yeah.
like in terms of where we can maybe use some work. But I think
Yeah.
that's true for a lot of parents, right? Like whether, as a listener, whether you're on the end where you're like, okay, I maybe tend to gravitate towards some permissive stuff, or maybe I tend to gravitate towards some authoritarian, in your own reality as we move forward, think about like, okay, what's a situation, right? So if mine is I need to practice with the shoes and the getting ready in the morning, like what might be your situation this week where you might think about where you can strike a little bit more of a balance, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Tiptoeing in the right direction is still progress.
Tiptoeing. Oh, that word right there makes me think of Mackenzie and her stop, breathe, talk moments
Oh
that we
yeah.
that we that we tiptoe.
Yeah, we tiptoe around a little bit.
Yeah, she's
But here she goes.
oh, there she
I
is.
say I feel like we always are like, oh, dread.
Oh.
We like you, I swear.
I'm
I'm nervous
so
about your
glad
question.
that when you think of me, you think of tiptoeing and dread.
Yeah.
That's
Love you.
really good news.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's time for Stop Read Talk. We can stop that conversation, maybe take a breath, and we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay,
So
so
very.
today's question is so we're gonna answer a question for parents listening. If someone is listening and they're maybe aligning themselves, they're finding themselves maybe feeling like they fit in a certain style, parenting style where they're at right now. Do you think that our parenting style may change as we go along, or can it change? And if so, what quickly might that look like?
Dibs.
Okay, go.
One thing we didn't say, in this whole episode, is that research tells us that I don't have a citation, but this is a thing that I know in my brain, that we might be more likely to gravitate to the way we were raised. And so for everybody that looks different, maybe you have a really strong relationship with your parents, or there's a wide variety of those things and how you feel about how you were raised. And even if we love how we were raised, there's probably things we would do differently. But so recognizing that your parenting style, you might gravitate, and especially in those moments of stress, you might gravitate to the way you were raised. And so my suggestion, I guess, I mean, it's a little on the nose of what we talk about, but that's stopping, right? That stop, read, talk that, we talked about last week in the self-regulation, that self-control, because I fess up that patience is not a natural virtue to me.
Sure.
It's a thing I have to work on. So that stop, I think we can get there. I think it can change but it takes practice, a lot of practice. So.
Yes, all the above.
All of that, just all of that.
Yes, all that. And I think that another thing to identify here is we really strive to, here at the Science of Parenting, make sure that you understand that we're sifting through all the research for you.
Yeah.
But what we also want you to recognize is that it is not going to look the same in every home. How the reality plays out is not going to be the same. And so we really want to make sure that we keep telling you that this is what the research says. We've sifted through all these little pieces of research, and this is these are the important pieces, but how it looks for you may be different than how it looks for Mackenzie and I.
Oh yeah.
And again, I just want to bring up this piece of having a child with special needs is being able to say like, yeah, I had these ideas and thoughts about how I was going to parent, but the more I learned at each stage and age that my daughter had when it came to her special need, I had to change my parenting.
Yeah.
And I changed my parenting for her based on my other two kids. And so
Right.
how I parent her is different than how I parent the other two. My expectations are different. And even if she didn't have a special need, I would still parent her different because her temperament or personality are different than theirs.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Which those are
a
later
great point,
episodes.
too.
Those are later
Yeah.
episodes.
But
that
that but adapting, right?
Yeah.
Like your
Right,
style might
right.
be different. Yeah.
And that was my thought as you were saying that too, is my sister has 4 kids, and let me tell you, they have 4 very different personalities.
Right?
That last one, Lori, like you were saying, your last one, you just let them do whatever they want because you're at
You're so
4,
exhausted.
on the
Yeah.
table, and you're like, oh man. But
Right.
Yeah.
okay,
And maybe you have a little more experience picking your battles, right?
Right,
Like
right.
that's
But
not the
they
battle I
have
want.
different personalities.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
might parent them in different ways as well. So,
Yes.
all right. Well, that was Stop Breathe Talk for today, and I
All
will sign
right.
us out. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kens. Well, that was it, right?
That's
Parenting
it.
styles. We covered it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much more, but we covered it.
Yeah, I'm excited about what we have laid the groundwork for. I
Yeah.
know some of our upcoming topics, and so hang with us.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Yeah. And thanks
Cool.
for joining us today on our Science of Parenting podcast. And remember, subscribe to our weekly audio podcasts. You can look for them on Apple or Spotify or your favorite podcast app. Watch the show on video, right? We
Yes.
have these recorded so you can watch them. And then once a month, at the end of the month, Thursdays, 12:15 on
Yeah.
Facebook, join us live. We take your comments and your questions. But mostly, we just want you to remember to come alongside us as we tackle the ups and downs and the ins and outs and the research and the reality of the science of parenting.